Hey everyone, my name is Josh Cook, Microsoft MVP. I'm going to be showing how to use the Excel connector in Power Automate with a dynamic file name. Now there's a tons of workarounds online. I even have a blog post here on my website explaining how to do it. In my blog post, I'm actually using an HTTP connector to SharePoint, which is using Graph API in the background. Now I'm going to be going over a very simple way to do this without having to use HTTP at all. It's going to basically just use three actions. Actually, well, two actions, one trigger. Now let's get into it. So let's head over to Power Automate here. I'm going to create a flow called Excel Dynamic File Name for SharePoint. Now we're going to be using a SharePoint trigger for when a file is created in a folder. Now, if you're not using this trigger for your use case, that's okay. You can actually just use another flow and then basically put the file into SharePoint and then have a secondary flow, which will be this one, when a file is created in a folder. And then we'll be able to use this workaround here. So I'm going to select when a file is created in a folder. Basically, we're just going to have to put in our site address. In my case, I'm using a home organization site. And for the folder ID, that's my document library. And for my document library, I am going to select storage bins. Now the infer content type, just leave it as yes. Next step. So first we're going to need to get the tables for that file. So we're going to use the get tables action. And again, we're going to have to select our SharePoint site as the home organization one. There it is. And the document library, same thing. It's going to be storage bins. Now for the file, this is where things get interesting. I'm not going to select this folder icon. I'm going to put this in dynamically. And because of this trigger, when a file is created, this is the ID right here that we need, XMS file ID. Now, this ID is going to allow us to call in this file dynamically. So I'm going to click on this one. Now I'm going to get all the tables. So now what I need to do is I'm going to need to get all the rows. Now, this is kind of how everyone kind of, most of the use cases stem from list rows present in table. And again, I'm going to have to select my SharePoint site here, home organization. And then for the document library, same thing, storage bins. For the file, again, I'm not selecting that file icon. I'm actually just going to pass in the ID. So I'm just going to search here ID and pass in the same ID from the trigger that I'm passing in the get tables action. Now for the tables, since the tables is an array, all the tables, even though there's might only be one, I'm going to do a custom value. Now you see here when I select the drop down, there's nothing in there. I want to hit enter custom value. When I do that, it's going to allow me to put in an expression or anything I want, and I'm going to get the first the first table ID. So the way I do that is I type in first, I'm going to use the first expression, and then I want to go back to my dynamic content. Oh yeah, it removed my expression. So I'll type it again first and basically hit dynamic content. I'm going to pass in the value from the tables action. Now this is going to basically grab the first table, or yeah, the first table, all of those details. What I actually want is the ID. So if I go to the very end of the expression and put a question mark, and then I'm going to put square brackets and single quotes. That's how we traverse into the JSON. And I'm going to put ID. So that's basically going to say I'm going to grab the ID from the first table's action. So I hit OK. Now I'll put this expression in the description below. One thing I do want to point out, if you're having an issue with this expression, I suggest turning off experimental features. This can be done by clicking on the settings icon and viewing all Power Automate settings, and then turning off experimental features. Now you don't have to turn it off. You're actually able just to use the outputs expression, and then you can actually hard code or type yourself, like get tables, question mark, body value. But to make things a lot simpler for you guys, I suggest just turning off experimental features for this, just until they actually fix the experimental features, I guess, when they become public. So that's kind of really it. Can you believe that this is literally the only thing we need to do to call that dynamic file name? Now, for the longest time, I've been doing it the hard way. And I even wrote like it's one of my most popular blog posts. So I really wanted to push this out and get this quick video out to all of you, especially for people that don't want to touch the HTTP call at all. This is a super easy workaround. Also, if you have a date column in your table, make sure to select this date time format and put ISO so it comes in as a real date. It's a great update Microsoft has made. Now let's go test out the flow. Here's one of my previous runs just to show you that it does work. I passed in a file here. Here's the file ID, the XMS file ID. There it is. And I'm using that XMS file ID. You can see it here in the get tables action in the file parameter. And again, that is bringing over the table, in this case, table 1, and it's bringing over the ID as well. That ID is being pushed over here into the list rows present in the table. And that's the same file ID as well. And as you can see, it brings in the data. That is it, guys. If you found this video helpful, leave a like. If you have any issues whatsoever with this flow or any questions, drop a comment in this comment section. Reach out to me on all my social media platforms. They'll be linked below. Other than that, have a great day. Peace.